Hello, welcome to episode 404 of the Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the co-host and executive producer, and I'm joined by Sri Srinivasan, co-host and creator of the show. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Please like, comment, share, retweet, do all the things you do to make sure people can find the show on social media. We have a very interesting show planned today, and I want to do a special shout out to everyone watching on replay or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We are going to be covering several issues, but three in particular. We'll be looking at climate change, particularly the wildfires in Europe, and we'll review all the latest AI news. We'll also be looking at the Odyssey, some of the critiques that have come out and the responses. If you've seen the Odyssey, we'd love to hear what you think of the blockbuster adaptation. Thank you again for joining us. We do this every week, Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. One of the hallmarks of the show is to be able to bring in audience comments and hellos as people are watching. And our first three, our friend Apollo is watching from Philadelphia. Thank you, Apollo. And of course, John is watching from the East Village. Always great to have you, John. And Doug Levy is saying good morning from Marin County, California. Yes, that's California. It's 5:30 a.m. Pacific time for Doug, but he's I know I've joked around a little bit about it, but a long-time radio hand. This is just when he gets up and when he gets going. So we're always honored to have you make us part of your morning. Again, we are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and the Digimentors website. We are proud that the show is produced in partnership with Scroll and Scroll Global, one of India's most important independent websites. And we're also thankful for the support we get from our sponsors, particularly Muck and Graphic History Company. Muck is a longtime sponsor of the show. Graphic History Company is coming up almost on a full year of sponsoring the show. So thank you so much for your support. And of course, the show is produced by Digimentors, the social and digital consulting firm that Sri started with his friend Andrew Lee several years ago. I am proud to be a vice president of events and communications for Digimentors. We have been producing this show for 10 years, if you can believe that. We recently celebrated our 400th episode, and we've had 275 guests on the show. Our 400th episode was an epic show. It featured Tom Jolly, the New York Times print editor, Wayne Camadoy, the New York Times art director, and Mike Connors, the New York Times production department managing director. That's a long title, but he really is in charge of the printing plant at College Point, Queens. And Paula Kiger, our longtime producer, joined us as a co-host for that show. What an incredible show. And that's Paula Kiger saying good morning from Nashville instead of her usual Tallahassee. So let's go ahead and bring on Sri Srinivasan. Sri, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Neil. Good morning. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for being part of this show. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you've been watching for years, thank you for making this what the show is, which is a community of readers, supporters, folks who care about the news, who care about fighting misinformation, disinformation, and that's really important. John says, great to be back, was out with a summer cold for a couple of weeks. I'm glad that was all it was, John. We're so happy that you're here. here. Ken Fisher is watching from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We are always grateful to our folks around the world who are with us. I see Ron, who's usually in Dubai, is here in Verona, New Jersey. He's been a sponsor of the show. He's been on the show. He's been watching every time, and we're very grateful to him.
Sri, if you didn't catch it, Ron did an amazing conversation on Friday as part of his CEO series with our friend Walter Grayson. It was an incredible way to start a Friday morning. I think the world of Ron. I think the world of Walter, and I learn something new every time I hear Walter speak. So it was just great to have the two of them in conversation. You should check it out. You can find Ron Thomas on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Check it out and find that show. You won't be disappointed.
And Ron's a great interviewer. I was lucky enough to be on one of his early episodes, and I was able to hear about his journey, but also the way he pulled things out of my journey was also very interesting. And look who's watching, Neil.
That is Sudha Parekh watching from Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. All the regulars who watch the show will know that's my mom. Mom, thank you so much for watching as always. I know that she is one of our most loyal watchers, just as your mom was, Sri. Mom once, I remember, landed in from India, was in a taxi watching at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. She wasn't going to miss a show if she could help it.
We love that. We love our family that watches and also our New York Times read along family. And look, Chinedu is watching. Hi, Sri. I'll never forget you. Thank you for your early support. Chinedu is an incredible entrepreneur who founded a website called Hop Stop, which was the only way to really get around New York City's subway system. And it was so early in this process. Now, of course, Google Maps, everybody else does this. And Chinedu, I look forward to catching up with you. Thank you for being part of my world online, and we also got to hang out and do stuff together. So I'm very grateful to reconnect here. And I see Diana is watching from Ann Arbor, Michigan today. So it's a lot easier for her because otherwise she usually is watching from California at 5:30 a.m. She usually has the print newspaper in her driveway. And then she is watching here. And our friend Mary C. Curtis is watching from a rainy Charlotte Arts Journalism Alliance CAJA event. And Sudha says, I love the read along family, which is, of course, you are an integral part of it in so many ways. We have a newsy week for you, lots of things to talk about. And we want to get everybody's feedback about how your day's going, how your Sunday is, wherever you are. And also, what are you reading in the news, hearing about in the news? And for those of you who are new, we do this because not just because we like having a print newspaper that's from New York, but we are really about journalism around the world. So if you are able to subscribe to any newspaper, please do. It will make a big difference in your own media diet, as well as the ability for journalists to produce the journalism they do. I like to start the paper by looking at the Saturday headline just to give everyone a sense of what is going on. So we're just going to look at very quickly yesterday's main story. Western states face deep cuts over water use. Colorado River Basin, legal fight expected. Climate change plus crimp on supply. Neil, I don't usually think I see just a like a phrase like that. You know, there's just a verb. I mean, just a noun. Colorado River Basin without saying something else. So I think that's kind of unusual. Just that one word. You know, the three words there without something about it. But that's a big story. And you see, this is by Friday afternoon. Spanish authorities said the majority of the migrants who had flooded into Quetta had returned to Morocco. And this is part of, you know, when you see this, you say, oh my God, this is all terrible, which it is, but it's also manufactured in part by the American empire, which has been the Trump administration and its supporters have been wanting to punish Spain. And that's the story about Morocco and this Spanish enclave that's just there, and all of that's connected into global politics and the Trump administration. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised about that.
It's also the historical, kind of. I mean, this is a several hundred year conflict in terms of Spain, Gibraltar, Great Britain, the enclaves in Morocco. This was the whole question. Britain was holding on to Gibraltar for years. Spain is holding on to enclaves in Morocco. It goes back to colonialism. I'm sure that Trump is making it worse, but this is a
Sure.
several hundred year issue,
Yeah.
for sure.
Sure. And Patricia says, grace and greetings from New York. By the way, it also got to do with the World Cup and how that was in one of the allies of America that's been very much against Trump's agenda in the Middle East. And so Trump was not happy that Spain won. And let's just look at a couple other headlines. Botched job, not sabotage, damaged pool. Imagine the millions of people around the world, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, because of Fox News and the Trump administration and Donald Trump constantly saying this was sabotage, that they believe it was sabotage. And now the report comes out that was a botched job, not sabotage, that damaged the famous pool, reflecting pool in Washington.
Well, and this is, I mean, to me, Sri, the significance of this story is that it's the charges were dropped. The district attorney in D.C., Jeanine Pirro, a longtime Trump supporter, and she's actually from Westchester County, so I know her from kind of that news cycle from when I was at home growing up. But it was in the filing, they said they're dropping the charges because this was due to mistakes made by the contractor, and they named the contractor. And when
Who's
I
a
read
friend
that,
of the administration,
a
yeah.
friend of the, I read that, I'm thinking, what's going on here? How is it possible that a loyal Trump servant, and that's the only way to use the term, is so clearly, contradicting the boss? And it didn't take long. Later in the evening, I think it was yesterday, Trump shared on Truth Social that Jeanine Pirro is wrong. It wasn't, maybe there were a few mistakes with the contracting, but it was vandals. It was vandals, I tell you. So this might be an interesting conflict to keep an eye on.
Sure. And look at this headline, just perfect. It says MAGA's media machine is starting to splinter. It looks at 12 of the biggest right-wing accounts, Megyn Kelly, Benny Johnson, etc. And you can see in this graph, right? You can see they're all these 12, if you add them together, you can see they're slowly going down. And the podcast listens, the Rumble views, that's a platform they use, X, YouTube views. So that's interesting if that continues. And in the home of tacos, Chipotle tries to fit in. This is Mexico's spicy market could be an issue. Chipotle, of course, is the I used to call it Subway of Mexican food, but it's like these are stories you see on a regular basis, Neil, when things like happen where coffee, Starbucks tries to come to Austria, for example. So places where there's culture around a specific kind of food, and what happens when an American brand comes in and tries to get in there. And I'm curious if there's any Domino's in Italy, for example, with the pizza. And this is a story about Chipotle. It says families eating last month at Chipotle in San Pedro in Monterrey. The first outlet the American chain has opened in Mexico. So it's kind of brave of them to do that. And I also wonder, is there Taco Bell in Mexico? I hope not. There shouldn't be any. But let's get to today's paper, the headlines and what's going on over there. This also, the picture here is of what's happening in that part of Morocco. Migrants waited on a beach for assistance on Saturday after a sudden exodus from Morocco. At least 67 people have died in the chaos. And that's, again, American made chaos in part. How a leading law firm stopped fighting Trump. It says at Paul Weiss, pursuit of corporate work clashed with proud activist history. And they were the first, I believe, to cave in, maybe even in the first 10 days of the administration. So I am wondering what has changed and why this story now. And it says Brad Karp, former chairman of Paul Weiss, the firm took on the first Trump administration and then sucked up completely. And we saw
Yeah.
universities, lawyers, as well as all the tech bros all go all in on Trump. And the brief, this is the headline for that story, the brief puzzling surge into a Spanish enclave, 50,000 from Morocco overwhelmed Quetta, a city of 84,000. And then GOP about face on military IVF. Bid to expand access treatments is killed. So I guess they were in favor of expanding IVF. And they always say they want more kids and want, so I'm not sure what's going on
Well,
there.
I think their solutions three, instead of promoting IVF, they're promoting testosterone to get more
Yeah,
kids.
yeah, great. All right. Here is another story. Let's look at that. It says vintners are tearing out their hair and vines. California hit as wine sales plummet. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought people drinking lots of wine. So much wine has gone unsold in California that vineyards are ripping out and burning the vines. That sounds like a real crisis. Let's see if people can tell us more in the comments. So please jump in if you can. Let's see who else is watching. We have a viewer on YouTube named John
Yeah,
who is spamming us with a lot of stuff, but I'll just pull up one comment. He
there's
said,
something.
yeah,
Yes.
too bad you chose such a liberal, one sided newspaper to read. So, this is something that we address on a regular basis. The way journalism has evolved in America now, thanks to the Fox News machine and MAGA and things like Newsmax and other channels, OANN, it makes it seem like journalism is a partisan medium. And journalists are not partisan. True journalists are not partisan. They report the news and bring you what's happening. But in the last 30 years, that has changed. And so people say, okay, the New York Times is all liberal. The opinion pages are liberal, but the news is the news. And we've seen how they're able to cover it and make a difference. And by the way, break lots of stories against Obama, break lots of stories against Biden, stories against Kamala Harris. All of that was done by the New York Times, and because they spend money on reporting, on journalism, on foreign bureaus, we need this newspaper. Doesn't mean this is the only newspaper we need, and doesn't mean that it's the only newspaper in the world. But we are seeing resources pulled away from reporting and put into all these other things, and that's part of the problem. So, John, take a look at the news and you will see, yes, they report against the Trump administration when there are problems, like we know, and there are so many problems with the Trump administration. But to call them a liberal newspaper does not make sense in a world where I say the same thing with the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal is not a conservative newspaper. Its editorial pages are conservative, reflecting Rupert Murdoch and the ownership. So that difference, Neil, is hard for lots of lay people to understand and very easy to weaponize against the other side.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we should emphasize is that yes, this show does focus on the New York Times. Sri and I both have a long relationship and history with the New York Times, growing up in New York. But we've also read and reviewed other papers as well: the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Washington Post, Dallas Morning News, Toronto Globe and Mail, even the Collegiate Times, Politico, Wall Street Journal. This is more a show about journalism and news, and we have an interest not just in how the news is covered, but how it's represented in the print edition, the layout, the graphics, the photos, etc. So we encourage people to read and consume news so they're better informed. The show focuses on the New York Times, but it's not exclusive to the
Yeah.
New York Times.
Very, very well said. And folks, please share this with your friends. Tag a friend. They can watch live or later on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, as well as digimentors.group. Take a look. There you'll see our archives. You'll also see what Digimentors does. So we appreciate you tagging your friends because you can join us later if 8:30 a.m. Eastern is not their best time. Space junk comes in pieces, posing a threat to Earthlings. That's not a headline you see often in a newspaper. Earthlings, flaming debris hitting homes and farms. So that's happening. So people who wanted visitors from space, it's happening, but not exactly the folks they would want.
Well, the question is, I saw this raised, I think in the headline or online, who pays for the damages when junk from space hits your house and goes through your roof? I wonder if State Farm will be there when you get some space junk.
That's a good question. And this is the cover of the New York Times Magazine.
Even without at a distance.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Mary says, for folks who think Trump doesn't affect them, imagine what that former Olympian was going through, facing 10 years in prison on a bogus charge. Our taxes paid for that prosecution. Neil, do you know this story?
Yeah, that's the one that we were referring to earlier in terms of the charges being dropped. He was an Olympic canoeist that was, went to the reflecting pool, picked up some of the paint chips that were floating to the top, and was immediately arrested and said that, accused of vandalism. So we're thankful that but that's been a long process for him to go through, and others as well. I didn't hear about the other people who've been charged and whether they're
Here she points out that Brett Stevens and others, including I forget, I think it's David French, I forget his first name, and of course Ross Douthat, are the columnists are hardly liberal. That's correct. They're in fact the opposite of that, and they were brought in by people like Barry Weiss and others to celebrate the fact that they have the other side, and that's what you won't see on Fox when you're watching Fox. How often do you see anybody who is liberal brought on there? They are there on occasion, but usually as punching bags, and that's what they try to do. Stefan is watching. Good morning, Neil, and the New York Times Read Along family. August is here, and it's going to be an exciting month for more reasons than one. That's just a tease. Hope everyone is well. In fact, I'm going to wish him a happy birthday in advance for this week. Happy birthday, Stefan. Great to see you recently. And looking forward to your news about your next adventure. Miriam's watching from Hell's Kitchen in New York, and Gargi is watching and saying hello, welcome. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Miriam says, regarding space junk, I've read for some time that Elon Musk has been very cavalier about junk from our satellites leaving debris in space. Of course he has. Like, that's not surprise. He's cavalier about everything, and then going out of his way to do great damage in the world. Neil, there was an Economist interview with the editor-in-chief that went viral all over the world because it was a sit-down interview where he took hard questions from the editor-in-chief. It was a very good interview. It made him expose him in so many different ways. But the fans of Elon Musk are always going to be very happy to hear and see whatever he is saying. Naomi is watching. The New York Times with the cornerstone of my 10th grade civics class, taught by Professor Roy Burry. He'd be considered woke today, and we've talked in the past about what the origin of the word woke and how it was co-opted. You got a joke in there, Neil. Funny joke about State Farm's jingle. That was funny. He caught that. Yes, well done. John says it could be argued that pizza and New York pizza are two different things. Ooh, Neil, respond to that.
I think that there's something to be said there. New York pizza is its own creation, its own breed. I think it's over and above other forms, other things that people call pizza. Alex, thank you for the fair enough in terms of my assessment about pizza, New York pizza, and what you might find in Italy. Sri, there's a comment on YouTube that I think it's worth responding to and engaging with. As a reminder, in addition to being live on Sri's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, my Instagram, and the Digimentors website, we're also live on Scroll's YouTube in India and opening up to an Indian audience. So this commenter is asking, why read an American newspaper for a channel with journalism about stories in India? Can you speak to that, Sri?
Sure. Thank you. A great question. And it's one of the things that we're trying to emphasize, the importance of fighting misinformation and disinformation globally. And the incredible audience that Scroll has. They are interested in the world. They're interested in what's happening around the world. Scroll Global is their global arm. But what we see and why our friends at Scroll have embraced are putting this show on their channels as well is because people in India really want to know how the world sees India and the world. And there is amazing coverage and interest in things like this in India, and that's why we're doing it. And we're grateful to you for the question. I'm just going to go back to our friend John here for a second. He points out a story that was turned out to be false, that Sarah Palin inspired the shooting of Gabby Giffords, who was a congresswoman at the time, and it was a wrong story. A lot of people got it wrong. And he says there was no evidence, and the New York Times issued a correction. And that's the part, folks, that the New York Times issued a correction. When was the last time you heard a conservative media person say, I got something wrong? When's the last time you heard the president say he got something wrong? That's the difference. No one's saying newspapers don't make mistakes. New York Times carries a long correction section every single day. The difference between real journalists and non-real journalists is they keep just plowing forward, as we've seen the president do for years.
And as we have done on several occasions, if the New York Times is, if it warrants criticism, we will criticize the Times. We should point out that although we have a great relationship with the New York Times and several of the editors and reporters have been on the show, this is not an official New York Times show, and we retain a little bit of distance, a little bit of independence, so that we can critique the newspaper as necessary.
Yeah. Somebody who's watching says, looks like John Patrick is using you as a punching bag. He has posted at least, by my quick eyeballing, at least 25, 30 comments. John, we're happy that you're watching, you're engaging with us, you're being exposed to new things that you had no idea because you are brainwashed by the media you follow. So this is good for you to be exposed to things like this. By the way, look at this cover on the back
Yeah.
of the New York Times. This is one of the sections, the arts and leisure. This is Smokey the Bear, 80 years of preventing forest fires together. For our non-American audience, this is a big problem in the US, the start of forest fires, and they've been using in advertising a cartoon bear called Smokey the Bear to say, let's say, forest fires. Neil, one of the big problems you may know is these prediction markets and gambling that's kind of taken over the world. And we have seen instances of people starting fires or predicting there's going to be a wildfire and then starting it themselves and then causing havoc, chaos, damage to property, wildlife, humans, etc. And I wrote about all of this in my newsletter last week. I hope you'll all check it out. It was about the problems with gambling. Like, you can gamble about everything now. And that's a chance for me to plug my newsletter, which is called Sri's Sunday Note. So Sunday is a busy day around here. And srinet.substack.com is the address, srinet.substack.com. Later today, you're going to see my newsletter is going to come out, and it's part of my series on my pre-diabetic life. And I've interviewed Dr. Alka Kanaya, who is a founder of the landmark Masala study that looks at heart health and other indicators of South Asians living in America. And you can learn how you can get healthier no matter what background you are in my newsletter. It's going to come out in a couple of hours, so about midday in New York time. But please subscribe, srinet.substack.com, or go to my LinkedIn. You can find me. And if you'd like to be on our WhatsApp group, there you see it, Sri's Pre-Diabetic Life. Just use your phone and join my WhatsApp group. We'd love to have you. And Neil, I am the kind of guy who can eat a whole jar of Nutella, including a jar of Nutella that size. That is not AI, Neil. That's an actual, at least a prop Nutella jar at the Dubai airport. And I am worried about my pre-diabetes, so trying to learn together. It's it's something we can try to reverse at our age. If you're 50 plus, you can actually try to reverse it. And that's what I am trying to do. So thank you, everybody, for supporting our newsletter, supporting this show, srinet.substack.com. We have a Patreon now, folks. If you'd like to join us and support what we're doing, this is our patreon.com/srinet. You can chip in $2, $5. We offer all kinds of things. It supports everything we do, this show, the newsletter. I run three friends and groups around the world, 30 plus groups, and it encourages us to be able to do this. So pitch in a couple of bucks if you can, patreon.com/srinet. And we have some exclusive perks just for folks who support us, including I'm happily able to give you a review, a makeover of your LinkedIn profile, as we've thrown in as a bonus for people who chip in. So if you'd like to do that, patreon.com/srinet to support everything we do online. Neil, we're grateful to everybody who watches us, even if they can't subscribe or can't afford to subscribe. We just want everybody to know that there are ways in which you can support this kind of journalism as well as this kind of journalism.
We're grateful to everyone who watches us, even the people who disagree, as long as they keep it respectful.
Yes. And here's John says, there used to be a cadre of Times readers who read the corrections first. I think that might include John. I'm not sure. And here are people, somebody called, imagine calling yourself Horror Fun 23. New York Times is communist. You don't, my friend, know what communism is. This is a corporate publication, a capitalist publication. That's why they are able to survive, and that's why they're thriving at this moment. And they have used the levers and tools of capitalism to survive. So the fact that you don't know what communism is, I know what communism is, Neil, as you know. I lived
Yeah.
in the Soviet Union as a kid. I used to come home saying Lenin is God. Then I moved to the Upper East Side and started saying John Lennon is God. And here is your mom jumping in to say it is good to be objective with the New York Times. And that's what we're doing. And Naomi says the AI overview, the New York Times there used to be an ombudsman or public editor. The newspaper eliminated the role in December 2017 after 14 years, stating that the rise of digital media and alternative public accountability made the internal position outdated. Started in 2003 following the high-profile Jason Blair plagiarism scandal to act as an independent reader representative, and would be interesting if this was here now. And here is Vinay watching from Switzerland. Congrats on episode 404. So thank
so
you
great.
thank you for your support. Apollo says this show slows down the blur of news coming from the Trump administration in DC, much less actual news happening outside the Trump world. This show helps slow things down and put them in focus. Wow. Thank you so much, Apollo. That means a lot to us. And John fesses up. He's one of the people who reads the corrections first. And Sujana, Dr. Chandrasekhar, is back to the Facebook feed. The comments are less irritating and way more fun. And Chris Gorman is watching. Sri and Neil watching from New York. Chris, we will have, Chris works at the wonderful Museum of the City of New York. We'll have some news about a very exciting opportunity for all of us in the fall. So stay tuned. That's just a teaser for everybody. And Naomi clarifies that John Lennon is God. And
Absolutely.
and yesterday, Neil, I was talking to folks about the movie Yesterday, which
Yes.
stars Himesh Patel,
Himesh
who's in the
Patel.
Odyssey. Maybe this will give us a chance to go into the Odyssey
Yep.
conversation for a moment. So Himesh Patel is in this tiny movie that most people missed. A lovely, lovely movie called Yesterday about a world where the Beatles don't exist. He's the only person who remembers the Beatles. He's such a great singer, such a great actor. And Ed Sheeran has a
Yes.
theme-stealing set of appearances in this movie, self-deprecating, but amazing, of course. And Himesh Patel, I've still not seen the film, does the same with the Odyssey. He steals the scenes in the Odyssey. Is that so? Neil,
Absolutely.
your thoughts?
So there are several things that we want to discuss: the Odyssey and some of the criticism among them. But I want to make sure that folks know that on our website you can find gift links to several articles. I'm going to show you real quick. Again, this is focusing on climate change, the latest AI news, and the Odyssey. So if you go to our website, digimentors.group, and find the New York Times read along, there's a link at the top of the page, and you'll find this episode. You'll see gift links to several articles around climate change, particularly the wildfires in Europe, some AI news from this last week, and also the Odyssey. So you mentioned the Odyssey, Sri. I did see it on Thursday with my family, with Emily, and Pam, and thought the movie was great. But I think that there are definitely some questions that are being raised about the adaptation and some of the choices that Christopher Nolan made. You did actually a interview as part of your series in terms of your newsletter. X teaches Sri about why, as part of your newsletter series. Tara Maria Fernandez and Krishna gave you some education about the Odyssey, both the movie, but also of course, Homer's poem, and of course the Iliad. Let's start there. What did you learn from this conversation?
Yeah, first of all, Neil, you are an amazing producer. The way you pull all this together. If you can just go back for a second to show the
Sure.
different things you've put into the digimentors.group, go to the New York Times read along section for this episode, and just to see this effort. This is why the show is different. We treat our audience as if they are participants and active participants in this. We want to empower you. We want to help you. And these are all free gift links that you can get right now. If you're not a subscriber, go out and read these, share these stories. Some of them are controversial. Some of them will be things you don't agree with, and that's the point. So that's why we do this. So thank you, Neil, for doing that, and also for bringing up what I did with our series X Teaches 3 Why About Why, and we did this with two younger people than me, Tara Maria Fernandez, who has a PhD in the teaching of literature, English literature, as well as my 23-year-old son, Krishna, who had seen the movie and read the book in high school. And one of the things I learned is that there is something so compelling about something written 3,000 years ago, Neil, that is really magical. And I want to hear about what Emily thought of in just a second. And we also talked about the Emily Wilson translation. And that's what I think inspired Christopher Nolan.
Yes.
But she has been critical of it, saying she was not happy, especially with the the portrayal of women in the show, in the movie, because it turns out there were several strong female characters in the translation as well as in the original, but Christopher Nolan has chosen to kind of paper over them, except for Cersei. The others are not as powerful as they could be, should be, etc.
And this is the New York Times article about that, how Emily Wilson's takedown of the Odyssey ignited a debate. Her 2017 translation, as you said, influenced Christopher Nolan, but she panned the screenplay for the movie version in an essay for the London Review of Books. So that, I think, that debate and discourse, I think, is very interesting. There's a lot in terms of the movie, Sri, where choices are made. There are scenes that, of course, are going to be cut out because of time. There are changes in the way certain sections are depicted based on what was in the book and what was, or rather, in the original poem, and what was on the screen. I think one of the bigger things is, if you without trying not to spoil it, there's a real emphasis on Odysseus and what his mental state is, what he's how he's reflecting on the war against Troy, which it kind of makes it more. It seems more palatable, more of interest to a modern audience, which I think was not as strong in the original. And I think that's probably the biggest. There are other things. There are smaller things for folks who are familiar with the story. The interaction with Cyclops is missing a key line in the interaction, which I know that my daughter was and I were both looking for. We're waiting to hear that interaction, and it just wasn't there. There are certain other changes that were made. But I think if nothing else, it's getting people to think about and go back and revisit this original text, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah, amazing. Very good analysis of that. And I want to hear Emily. Maybe we should have her record something for us or speak with us. I think that would be very cool for folks to learn, and she can teach me about this.
I was going to say, you might have to ask her yourself. I think her father asking her may fall on deaf ears. She's 13 now, Sri. So there's a little bit of a, oh, dad's asking. Not going to happen.
By the way, our friend Jason is still, John Patrick is still going strongly. He's posting so many different things. He's taking so much effort. He's not listening. He's just typing all the angry things he can. He did hear, we mentioned Jason Blair, and it's true. It was a crisis for the newspaper, crisis for American journalism when this young man fabricated story scenes, quotes, etc. And this is the part that John doesn't understand, that look what the Times did. They acknowledged widespread, not journalistic fraud, but by widespread, meaning concentrated on this young man, and launched the ombudsman and the reader representative. All of that stuff happened because of this. Think back to the last time you heard the president of the United States say anything correcting himself, anything on Fox correcting themselves. They just don't do it. And that's part of the reason why there is a difference between a real media organization and others that are just pontificating and don't care about getting things right, especially if they're, journalism is produced by humans. I think that's something that we shouldn't forget. Earth's warming primed France and Spain to burn, scientists find. The likelihood of hot, dry weather that helps wildfires spread has increased sharply in Europe in recent decades, according to a new report. And by the way, this guy, John, specifically talks about the climate change hoax and echoing the words of the president. So it'd be good if someone like him had their own ability to find out the truth on things, but it's very hard when it's the world is like what it is today, thanks to Elon Musk and others. Why do you need spoiler alert comments about such a dominant classic? So I think he's asking why we are hedging the specific line about the Cyclops and all of that. I have a thought on it, and then I'll ask Neil.
Sure.
I think that you even something like the Odyssey, to presume everybody knows everything about it or remembers every detail, I think is not possible in today's world, and especially when you have generations of new people, young people who are growing up who don't get exposed to things like this. So I'm in favor of spoiler alerts. And not just because, it's like we knew the end of the Titanic, right? You knew what happened to the Titanic, and you knew what happened in the movie Titanic, but people still watched it. People still wanted to follow along. So I don't mind. In fact, I encourage people to say and talk about spoiler alerts when they are spoiling things. But there are movies, and to be fair to what John is saying, books, there in cases with books, there's also in cases, look at that, I don't know why I got a thumbs up there. There's also in the case of movies like The Sixth Sense, which has a very famous twist at the end. And you'll say, well, the movie came out, whatever, 30 years ago. Doesn't everybody know? And the answer is no. So most people have not even heard of The Sixth Sense at this point. The younger people have not heard of it. And so why would we spoil it by just giving away what happened? So there's no hard or fast rules about any of this stuff. So what is your thoughts on this, Neil?
So I think, Sri, there are a couple of ways to think about this. One, there is the overall story. You use the Titanic as an example where most people know how it ends, right? in case you don't, the ship hits an iceberg and it sinks. There, I spoiled it for you. But with the Odyssey, what I was thinking about was more. I didn't want to spoil a decision or a change in the film from the original poem. I wanted to keep I was trying not to spoil that delta, if you will. I think that for the Odyssey, I think that if I told you that the Greeks won the Trojan War, if they used a horse to hide soldiers and get inside the city and burn it, that would not be spoiling the story, because that is the essence, or one of the major essences of the story. But a specific item or a specific depiction of the horse and what happened in that scene, I would probably try not to share, so that you would experience the movie and be as surprised as we were when we saw that detail.
And even if it's a disappointing, even if the result is disappointment that you missed it, it's better for you to experience that disappointment than to know in
Yes.
advance that it's going to be missing. Look at this. This is the debut of the word pish posh in the New York Times read along. This is about the discussion of why are there, black folks in the Odyssey. Elon Musk had a predictable meltdown over it. And by the way, Lupita Nyong'o is in the show, I believe, for just a few minutes, and he had a total meltdown. And Paulo says the presence of Africans in the Greek sagas is remarkable. For example, the princess Andromeda is Ethiopian, and she's saved in Perseus. So I did not know that detail. But by the way, speaking of words, I just wanted to talk for a second about our friend Rohit Bhargava's new book coming this fall. It's called Future Words, the non-obvious glossary of terms that don't exist but should. And they have words like skyburb and sloptimist. So these are words that don't exist. They explain what they are, but I presume a sloptimist is someone who is excited about AI slop instead of being upset that, like the rest of us, he has other words, an opinionaire, like a millionaire, I guess. He has so many words in here: flaunting, doom chaser, ladder jogging, tattooism, which is, I guess, tourism to get tattoos. So this is his book. It's coming out this fall, and it's from the best-selling authors of The Future Normal. This is Rohit Bhargava and Henry Coutinho Mason, and their book, Future Words. And by the way, he does everything so well. Even this card has this very nice embossing here, which I love. And then Ron says, welcome to the club. We've all been there with our daughters. The rolling of the eyes, which boys also do, is only part of that process.
Sure.
Ron says, let this guy go away. Don't even speak to it. And Sujana says, don't give him any more oxygen, Sri. And she uses an Hindi word, bus, which means stop, enough. And when you're in an Indian restaurant and they're pouring the water, you can try it with your waiter and just say bus, and they will be very impressed. It's pronounced like US.
You can also try it with family when you're over for dinner and you don't want an additional serving of food, but it doesn't seem to work in the same way. You can't stop the food being added to your plate. No. I'm not sure why it doesn't work in that context.
But your waiter or waitress is going to be more sympathetic. Jason Blair holed up in his apartment while fabricating stories. A commission reported on the New York Times failures to expose him. Sujana says, I agree with you on spoiler alerts. I feel the major ideas of the Odyssey have stayed in my mind since high school, 1978, but the details have not.
Yeah.
And look at this. Naomi says, Jason Blair interviewed my son about The Simpsons.
Oh, wow.
And invented quotes. One of the things that happened, I'm sure it's not the case with her son, is that they went back and asked folks who were quoted in the New York Times, how come you didn't tell us that, he never called you and you got a quote? And most people are like, I was in the New York Times. Well, did I want to go and I don't even know who to tell that I wasn't interviewed? And it was kind of not, neutral to flattering quote. So why would I change that? And so it was a very interesting situation. And Pradnya just popping up from Chinatown in New York City. We'll watch later. Welcome to New York, Pradnya. Glad you are here. And Neil, you have something to show
So,
us.
yeah, I just want to remind folks. So, this article that we showed earlier, this headline, Earth's warming primed France and Spain to burn, the connection between climate change and the wildfires. This is one of the gift links that we have on our website that you can access. One of three stories connecting climate change and the wildfires in Europe. These wildfires are the worst that Europe has seen in years. It's really devastating.
Yep.
And I think that, it's one of the things that we've covered on this show, and we've had Times reporters talk about climate change. So the more that we can, again, in that realm of addressing misinformation and disinformation, I think that we need to do everything we can to make sure that, the folks who are talking about, oh, it's global warming, but it's actually colder than it, like, that's just ridiculous. And we need to call that out to make sure that people understand what's going on.
Sure. Naomi says Jason Blair was a charming family friend. I wonder what became of him. And because Pradya's in Chinatown, Sujana says, check out the You and Me bookshop. Why You and Me bookshop there? It's tiny and lovely. We should do a whole episode where people make bookshop recommendations. And look, there's some books on the back of the real estate. There's something about Syracuse and about the bleak winters there, great summers. And the real estate cover is about facing a future with his home and passion. Captain Gavin Bladden has lived in and devoted himself to this yacht. Now its owner wants to sell. So he's the captain. I was going to say, should we feel sympathy for somebody with a yacht? But he's a working man in this case. The Metropolitan cover is a subway diversion that aims to delight whimsy and freebies at a vacant newsstand in the West Village station. Folks, we have about 5 minutes left. We're just going to run through these covers of the various sections of the Times. So you can see the Sunday business covers. Oh, it's baby's first surveillance system. Oh, it's very cute. Look at these. Cameras that's surveilling the baby. And when AI invaded heated rivalry fan fiction, I don't know if you've seen that show, Neil, but Heated Rivalry is a big, big show around the world. The fandom spiraled over an unidentified source calling out AI assisted stories. And there's a whole controversy in the Substack world about how AI is being called out in places, good and bad. That's always an issue. Deborah Kerr says, better late than ever. Tuning in from Ligonier, Paris, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah, it is Pennsylvania, but I've butchered the name. Fingers crossed. We are supposed to be in Bordeaux this October. Hope the fires are out by then. Yes,
Wow.
definitely. And Arlene is dropping in from Inwood in Uptown Manhattan. Arlene has been a guest on the show. She's been featured in the New York Times in the real estate section. So I think she gets her spidey sense tingles anytime we mention the real estate section. She was on the cover of the real estate section. Folks, let's go very quickly over the last couple of sections. Sunday Styles cover is, yes, there are health benefits, but bars are closing, jobs are going away, and a way of being together feels harder to find. What we are losing when we give up booze. Wow, what else are we losing? That's an interesting story. It sounds boring, somehow it isn't. With its cult hit online series Errands, Noah Blau has made the mundane fascinating. Jerry Seinfeld did that a long time ago, and this is the final section we're going to look at. This is a striking cover here. This is Sunday Opinion, and the cover is, let's see, The Trap of the Digital Double. Staring at ourselves on screen is taking us to a dark space by Catherine Shannon. That's let's see what the editorial, unsigned editorial, How to Protect America's Lead in the AI Race, Teaching Kids to Swim, and much more. So these are those unsigned editorials, as they say. Are you a jerk or a sucker? Your friends and neighbors makes you wonder, can you really be good, really rich, and also be a good person? This is from a show called Your Friends and Neighbors, I guess. And resist the siren call of shorts in the office. It might be hot outside, but men must not give in to showing the knee. David Coggins, the author of Men in Style and the newsletter The Contender. Neil, have you ever worn shorts in the office?
I wear shorts in my office every day, Sri.
Yeah. But what about at United Way?
Working
And
from home, not at United Way, not when I worked in an actual office, but
okay,
yes, taking advantage of work from home.
great.
Um,
Here's Deb helping us learn something. Ligonier is the
Ligonier.
pronunciation.
This-
Pennsylvania. Are there good reports on UNHCR report on Gaza or IDF treated as Lord Voldemort by BBCs and CNNs of the
hmm.
world? I don't see a story today. The story on Arlene Tillman and her rent controlled apartment was there. And final pizza rave. Mama's 2 TOO in the Upper West Side. Excellent pizza. We're going to wind up here,
Great.
Neil. We'll let you
Before
wrap up.
before
Yeah.
we wind up, there are a couple of things. One, there is a big story in the paper and online about Anthropic and OpenAI that I was hoping we have a little bit of discussion on to explain it because it says its AI systems broke into computers at 3 organizations, and this followed OpenAI's report last week that its own AI had hacked into the network of an online library. This is a gift link again that we have on our website. Sri, are you familiar with this story?
We've been following this and we're writing about this next Sunday because a lot of us think of Anthropic as the good guys in the AI discussion, but there are no good guys. They are the least of the bad guys, but then something like this comes along and it shows you how problematic everything is.
And my understanding is that it's and I want to kind of fact check this, is that these were not that their AI systems were out in the wild and actually breaking into computers. These were controlled tests, but it shows what they're capable of doing, and it's kind of a double-edged sword where to me the headline is much scarier than the reality.
But
It's
even
not
in those
that
boxes, some of them did escape, is what I
they did
understand.
actually escape.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll find out more. So please subscribe to my newsletter. You see my address right on the screen, srinet.substack.com. And we want to remind you that as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to go and work on this, finishing my newsletter, and we're going to help you be healthier with Dr. Alka Kanaya, a leading expert on diabetes as well as heart disease. And you can join my pre-diabetic life WhatsApp group on the upper side, left side. You can see that. Please join, and we're very grateful to Arogya World for supporting my efforts to fight my own pre-diabetes. So thank you very much, everybody. And plug very quickly for the JLF Lit Fest and JLF USA. It's going to be in 7 cities in 3 weeks. North Carolina, in Raleigh, Los Angeles, Seattle, Colorado, Toronto, in New York, and in Houston, and at the Jaipur Literature Festival, January 17th to 18th, 2027. I'm going to be in all of these places. Neil, you and I need to talk about some episodes I might have to miss on a Sunday morning. But if you have friends anywhere in these cities, please let them know, and they should come out, and I'll help them have a wonderful time along with everybody else. So we appreciate everyone who supports all of the things that we do. And Neil, great episode. We're going to wrap up now. I see some final comments have come in. And Sujana says, I need to take another Sri AI tutorial course. We have a recording of our last one with a live session coming up. So thank you for that. If you follow my socials, you'll get alerts about a great show, says Apollo. Have a glorious week ahead, everyone. And the JLF Literature Festival details at tinyurl.com/JLFUSA. Thank you very much. And goodbye, everybody.
See you next week. Remember, if you joined the show late, you can watch the replay in just a few minutes on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter, and on our Digimentors website. Sri, I do want to, before we close, Anita Joe, watching on Twitter, said it's our job to read all sides from many sources. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. And I think there isn't a better way of ending the show than that, to highlight that comment from Anita Joe. It is our job to read all sides from many sources. Let's keep
But
doing
not
that.
all sources. That's the key. And I think she's right. You should hear.
Yes.
I love reading the Wall Street Journal editorial pages because I learn things in there. And so we're not saying don't listen to the conservative media. We're just saying make sure you, as you keep your mind open. There's a famous saying: "Keep your mind open, but don't let your brains fall out." And you have to be careful about that in what you're doing. Patricia says, "Thank you." And now I want pizza, says John. That's
Yes.
a beautiful note to end on. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.